An ordinary family portrait revealed 4 sinister quadruplets with a spine-chilling, cursed past. The attic was musty, filled with shadows and thick with silence. It was the kind of quiet that put your heart on edge, yet Sarah Parker soldiered on, sorting through discarded memories. Her hands trembled as she uncovered an old family portrait, its frame cracked and dusty. The image showed her quadruplets, Emma, Lucas, Anna, and Max, each child's face eerily familiar yet twisted with something she couldn't quite put her finger on. Their smiles seemed too wide, too knowing because she had seen those sharp features in other photographs, pictures tucked away in the town archives that dated back generations. Chills slithered down her spine. Did her children belong to a legacy she had never asked about? A hard knock echoed from the attic door, snapping her mind back to the present. The laughter of her quadruplets faded into an eerie quiet, sending another shiver through her bones. "Kids," she called, sensing something was wrong, her heart racing. Silence answered. Panic clawed at her throat. She stumbled down the stairs, dread creeping along her skin like icy fingers. Shadows danced around the corners of the walls, sporadically interrupted by the flickering lights overhead. "Emma!" Sarah shouted, her voice echoing through the quiet house. "Mom!" Anna's soft voice broke through the stillness, but it held a tremor that froze Sarah in her tracks. The air felt heavy, almost tangible, as she searched for her children. "We don't like it here," Emma whispered, her wide eyes reflecting terror. "The shadows, they warned me." What could she say? Children have vivid imaginations, don't they? That's what she desperately convinced herself as she hugged them tight. But dread coiled tighter. Those whispers, lingering just beneath the town's surface, spoke tales of a past that never wanted to die, an unsettling rumor that her husband's disappearance was tied to legends of lost souls. Late that night, dark clouds swirled outside, matching the chaos inside her mind. Her children huddled close, sleep eluding them. The ticking clock echoed ominously as tension thickened in the room. "They were here, Mom. They want us," Lucas murmured, his small face distorted with fear. Sarah felt her pulse race, the weight of truth pressing down like a suffocating blanket. "Before we continue, I need to tell you something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to their system and many people are missing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and select all notifications so you don't miss future videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen." Now let us continue. As she sifted through twisted memories and her children's night terrors, she was gripped by desperation. Could the painting hold clues? Fear gnawed at her like an uninvited guest refusing to leave. Was she strong enough to unravel the knot of darkness secure around her family? In a moment of clarity, she decided to confront the truth, even as shadows seemed to close in tight. A sense of urgency coursed through her as she prepared to unearth the layers of her life intertwined with her children's terrifying heritage. Outside, a branch scraped against the window, its sound like a warning, echoing through the night. And as she turned to her children, the portrait's eyes flickered, locking onto her in a chilling display. Had she awakened something far more sinister than she could ever imagine? The chilling realization that her family, her precious quad squad, harbored a hidden darkness began to unravel, just as the night closed in. What if the real danger lurked within the ones she fought so hard to protect? The answer loomed, shadowed in the corners of the room, leaving her breathless with dread. Sarah's heart pounded like a drum in her chest as she looked from the portrait back to her children. The moment felt like an eternity, each heartbeat echoing in the suffocating silence. "What do you mean?" she asked, trying to mask the tremor in her voice. The fear etched on her children's faces told her that this wasn't just a game. "The shadows want us," Anna repeated, her gaze fixated beyond Sarah's shoulder, eyes wide as if they could see the darkness coming for them. In the dim light, Sarah could almost believe it, could feel an unsettling presence stirring just out of reach. "Maybe they're just playing," she offered weakly, though uncertainty gnawed at her. A small voice in her head screamed that this was more than just childhood fears. "Mom!" Lucas cried out, jumping up, pointing towards the attic stairs. "Look!" The shadows seemed to writhe, dark tendrils creeping along the walls. Another chill washed over her. "Stay close," Sarah ordered, her maternal instinct kicking in as she held her children tight. Anxiety pulsed within her, persistent and relentless. She moved cautiously toward the staircase, her breath coming fast. As she stepped onto the first creaky stair, the lights flickered again, and for an instant, she swore she saw figures darting in the corners of her vision. Sarah paused, fighting the urge to flee. What was happening? The portraits of her children seemed grotesque now, their smiles mocking her as she climbed toward the unknown. When she reached the attic door, she hesitated. The air was heavy, thick with something both familiar and terrifying. Her heart raced as she grasped the doorknob, half expecting it to burn her skin. Instead, it turned easily, swinging open with an ominous creak. The attic was cluttered with boxes and cobwebs. Dust motes danced in the beams of moonlight streaming through the window, illuminating the eerie scene. But in the corner, something else caught her eye. A small child-sized rocking chair moved gently, as if recently vacated. The cold grip of dread settled in her stomach. "Is anyone here?" she called, her voice wavering. The silence that followed felt heavy, almost mocking. Yet, within that silence, she thought she heard breathing slow, measured, almost waiting. The portrait leaned against the far wall, a shadowy figure within the frame writhed, almost alive. Its eyes, now dark voids, seemed to pulse with malicious intent. "Mom!" Emma screamed suddenly, her eyes locked on the portrait. "It's looking at us." The air grew thick with apprehension as Sarah tore her gaze away from the painting, desperately searching for assurance in her children's faces. But they were wide with horror, and she realized the truth in their fear, a truth she had yet to grasp fully. The chilling legacy, the shadows, and the whispers had taken their form. "Run!" she shouted. But as she turned, the attic door slammed shut, trapping them. Panic surged, her heart racing beneath the weight of despair. "What do we do?" A laugh echoed, chilling her to the bone. It was a sound like broken glass, high-pitched and mocking. "You should have left the past buried." The voice slithered into the air, wrapping around them like a noose. Her children huddled closer, each one wearing expressions of dread that mirrored Sarah's own. She would protect them no matter the cost. The shadows loomed closer, and the familial bond they shared felt more like a chain, dragging them deeper into the darkness. But as they edged back, the walls shifted, the shadows growing more defined. A flicker caught Sarah's eye. Was that fingers? A hand grasped through the dust, pulling itself from the frame. "No!" she gasped, pushing her children behind her. What had she uncovered? The true horror of her family's legacy was about to unfold. Was this just the beginning, or had they crossed a line that could never be uncrossed? Questions dashed through her mind as she braced for what lay beyond that flickering light. How would they escape? And most chilling of all, what if their only hope was something they had always feared? Panic seized Sarah as she backed away from the advancing shadows. The hand, pallid and skeletal, continued to reach out from the frame, groping towards her like a desperate plea. "Mom, please!" Lucas whimpered, his small body shaking against her. She could feel his heartbeat drumming against her side, quicker than her own. "Hold on tight," she whispered, gripping their hands as tightly as she dared. Each breath felt heavier, the air thick with an overwhelming dread. The walls around them felt like they were closing in, suffocating. The echoes of laughter spiraled in the silence, taunting her. "You cannot hide. We are here to collect." "Collect what?" Sarah shouted, her voice steely against the cold terror ripping at her. The darkness crept, curling around her ankles like a predator. She could see figures emerging now, writhing shapes that twisted into grotesque semblances of what had once been familiar. Her mind raced back. Hadn't they always said not to meddle with the past? The portrait had been hung as a family heirloom, a treasured memento of memories long gone. Memories that now morphed into nightmares before her eyes. Is it the children? Emma's voice broke the trance, filled with confusion and fear. Are they the past? Mom! Anna screamed, pointing to the shadows pooling at their feet. It's coming. With an instinct so primal it was as if it were woven into her very being, Sarah lunged forward, urging her children to follow. We need to get out. Now. The door, ominously shut, refused to budge. She slammed her shoulder against it, desperate and frantic, shouting for it to open. A deeper laughter rang out, a cacophony that rattled her bones. The attic seemed to pulse with life, objects surrounding them levitating for a heartbeat before crashing down, a chandelier, an old trunk, a stuffed bear eerily grinning. It felt like the house was in on it, conspiring against them. Flee! A voice they all recognized, her mother's, sounded warped through the shadows, reverberating against the walls. Get out of the house while you still can. Mommy! Lucas cried, his face pale, tears streaming down his cheeks. Against her better judgment, Sarah turned toward the portrait, urging her children back toward the two-dimensional hand stretching from the painting. Maybe it's our only way out. The idea horrified her, but she had no choice. They were bounded to their lineage, whether they wanted it or not. But as she reached for the image, clawing at the boundary, she felt a cold force pushing back. The eyes of the dark figure blazed with a fiery hatred. Touch it, and lose yourselves forever. The voice hissed. Mom! Emma shrieked again, tugging at her sleeve, don't. But the shadows throbbed with energy, hungry and relentless. Sarah felt the pull of ancient desperation dragging her closer to the wall, the truth unveiling with every heartbeat. She had stumbled into a web she could neither escape nor fully comprehend. Listen to me. Sarah shouted, trying to maintain her grip on reality. Whatever they were, whatever this is, they can't take us. We have to remember who we are. I don't want to remember. Anna cried, the light of her spirit flickering. The shadows narrowed their grip as something shifted in the attic, a heady whisper beginning to fill the air. The rocking chair began to sway back and forth on its own accord, slower and slower, like a lullaby gone wrong. Sarah's mind spun, desperately searching for a way to fight back. We need to find the light. She shouted, rallying her children. But as she glanced down, the floor beneath them began to dissolve into darkness, cracks spiderwebbing across the boards, swallowing light and hope. Mom! What do we do? Anna cried. A grotesque shape began to materialize between her and the children, foreboding and monstrous. The silence that followed was deafening, each moment stretching as they all knew something had to give. Trust me, she murmured, but the question still loomed, gnawing at her insides. Could she truly guide them through the nightmares of their own past? Or would they too be consumed, becoming shadows in that cursed picture, just another part of a legacy tainted by darkness? As the pitch-black energy surrounded them, Sarah prepared to fight against the tide of despair. But what was left to trust? Was survival even an option? And in that terrifying moment, with the shadows grasping closer, new screams filled the room, yet they weren't just her children's voices who was calling for her now, from the depths of that cursed painting. A deafening stillness exploded after the screams, reverberating in the attic like a thunderclap. The air crackled with tension, each breath pulsing with an electric fear. As Sarah turned to her children, she felt the primal urge to protect them clawing at her chest. Stay close, she shouted, trying to mask her own fear with determination. Lucas clutched her leg, wide-eyed and trembling, while Anna's breath came in quick, shallow gasps. Emma stood frozen, her gaze glued to the shadows, gathering around them like a sinister fog. The grotesque figure that had begun to form before them was shifting, contorting into faces once familiar to Sarah, a reflection of innocence twisted into something unrecognizable. Her heart raced as she realized the truth, a cold dread settling deep in her bones. Mom, I can see them. Emma's voice quivered, choking back a sob. It's us. It's us in that painting. The implication sent a tremor through Sarah. They were being pulled into something much larger, far beyond her control. No. She yelled, dispelling the image from her mind. It's just a trick. But her pleading felt flimsy against the surreal horror unfolding. The shadows stretched toward Emma, their fingers like smoke, eager to ensnare her. Run! Sarah shouted, but even as she shouted, she noticed a shimmering light emanating from the floor, a golden glow breaking through the cracks. It pulsed like a heartbeat, urging freedom. Mommy, what if it leads us to them? Anna whispered, her eyes wide with confusion and terror. We don't have a choice. Sarah gripped their hands, pulling them toward the light. The tendrils of darkness writhed, angry and violent, their shadows snapping and curling like wildfires desperate to extinguish any hint of brightness. Just as they crossed into the luminous circle, she felt a pull as if the floor had turned to liquid. The shadows surged, screaming in a chorus of rage, the laughter merging into a chaotic symphony that ignited the air around them. Let go! Sarah cried. We've got to trust each other. As they plunged into the light, something cold grasped her wrist painfully, a claw that tried to drag her back. She felt the intense pressure of the shadows, and panic set in again. Pull! She urged, feeling her children tighten their grip. With every ounce of strength, Sarah yanked them forward. The light swallowed them whole in an explosion of warmth and brilliance. But then, it abruptly faded. They landed hard on a cold, polished floor, staring wide-eyed around them. It was another room, one they didn't recognize. The air was stale, thick with an unsettling calmness. What just happened? Anna panted, scanning the space as if expecting something to lunge at them. Stay together, Sarah whispered cautiously. The silence was maddening, no shadows, no laughter, only an oppressive weight hanging in the air. As their eyes adjusted, they noticed something: a tall, intricate mirror lining one wall, its frame adorned with the same grotesque faces that danced in the shadows earlier. It was a mirror, yet it didn't reflect their terrified figures. Instead, a swirling mist pulsed within it, images flickering in and out of focus. Is that us? Lucas stammered, pointing. They leaned closer, and through the mists, they could see their own lives, distorted memories entwined with shadows of figures long thought lost. Turn back! Screamed a voice, eerily familiar and mournful. It echoed from deep within the mirror, threading through the mist. This isn't your world. You don't belong here. Heart pounding, Sarah reached out to touch the glass, but a wave of cold hit her hand, a jolt of icy terror that knocked her back. Her children gasped, their eyes wide, full of disbelief. Maybe it wasn't over after all, Emma whispered, and the despair seeped through her words like poison. What was this place? What other horrors awaited them? And as the mirror's surface rippled, the figures within began to stir, reaching out. Who were they trying to save? And would this mirror reveal an answer or drag them even deeper into darkness? The mirror pulsed, its surface alive with writhing shadows and echoes of long-buried memories. Each flicker of mist revealed a glimpse of past moments, birthday celebrations turned to nightmares, laughter morphing into cries. Sarah stepped back, heart hammering, pulling the children with her. Don't look! She urged, but it was too late. They were entranced by the visions, each child frozen as if caught in a spell. Mommy, Anna breathed, her voice tremulous. What if they're trying to tell us something? What if they're lying? Sarah shot back, gripping Anna's hand tighter. The warmth of her daughter's touch was the only thing anchoring her to the present. Suddenly, the mirror's mist shifted violently. Faces emerged, contorted in anguish, their mouths opening in silent screams. A familiar face shimmered in the chaos: her sister, Lily, who had vanished years ago. Sarah! Help me! The image cried, mouth moving but no sound escaping. Lily! Sarah screamed, instinct kicking in as she lunged forward. But the cold barrier of the mirror repelled her, sending a chilling shock through her body. The children recoiled, the air thickening like the aftermath of a storm. Then the shadows surged, coiling and snapping, as if angered by Sarah's defiance. "Get away from the mirror," Emma warned, her eyes betraying the fear that gripped her heart. "No." A new voice boomed from within the mirror, dark and low. "You must come through. Join us." "What do you mean, join us?" Lucas cried out, terror rising in his chest. The mirror's mist swirled faster, revealing more faces, figures trapped in time, limbs outstretched as if trying to escape. "We were taken," a whisper echoed. "You will understand. We all belong." That word sent fresh dread through Sarah. Belong. The very notion of being connected to these faceless shadows felt abhorrent. She had spent her life running from the past, now it threatened to swallow her whole. "Mommy, we can't stay here," Lucas whimpered, tugging at her shirt. "Please, let us just go." The urgency in her son's voice pierced through the haze. "You're right," she said, her heart racing. "We need to find a way out." But as she turned to search the room, the walls began to close in, the air growing dense and suffocating. The intensity of the shadows thickened, clawing at her resolve. "What if it's a trap?" Anna whispered, glimpsing the faces in the mirror once more. "What if a sudden rush of wind whipped through the room, throwing them off balance?" The mirror flashed brightly, illuminating the grotesque faces in sharp relief. The shadows recoiled, shrieking in collective despair as Sarah clasped her children tightly. "We have to break it," Sarah yelled, her voice barely audible over the cacophony of rage and sorrow. She searched desperately for anything to shatter the reflective prison. As her eyes darted toward an old rusted lamp in the corner, a flicker of hope sparked. "There. Mommy, be careful," Emma warned, but there was no time for hesitation. Shadows lashed out, swirling around their feet, yearning to trap them in this twisted purgatory. Without a second thought, Sarah lunged for the lamp, gripping it tight as she swung it toward the mirror. "Hold on." As the metal collided with the glass, a thunderous crack echoed through the room, a deafening scream erupting from the mirror. But would it be enough to sever the connection? The kids screamed, but it wasn't fear that filled the air. Something darker surged within the shattering mirror. They plunged into an abyss of screams, shadows spiraling, the grip of the past pulling them deeper into the unfathomable darkness. "Mom!" Lucas cried, and then everything went black. What had they unleashed? Could they escape the wrath that now waited just beyond the shattered reflection? When Sarah's eyes fluttered open, the oppressive darkness wrapped around her like a thick fog. She struggled to catch her breath, gasping for air, disoriented. The chilling silence clawed at her, filling the space where the echoes of screams had just been. "Kids!" she called, her voice trembling. Panic surged through her as the weight of uncertainty bore down on her. "Anna! Lucas! Emma!" A faint whimper broke the stillness. It was Anna. "Mommy, I'm here." Sarah reached out, her fingers brushing against the cool, damp floor. It felt like cold clay beneath her hands. She groaned, pushing herself up. The air was heavy, thick with an unbearable sense of dread. "Can you see me?" "I can't see anything," Anna cried. "It's so dark." "Stay close, please." As Sarah stumbled toward her daughter's voice, she felt a wave of unease wash over her. Something was wrong. The familiar warmth of their home was gone, replaced by a consuming cold. When she finally found Anna, she pulled her into a tight embrace, heart racing. But where were the other two? The thought of them separated sent a jolt of fear through her. "Emma! Lucas! Mom!" a soft voice echoed. It was Lucas, his words trembling with alarm. "Over here." Sarah turned, desperation fueling her movements, and soon she found him cowering against what felt like a rough wall. Without hesitation, she wrapped her arms around him, relieved but still anxious. "Where's Emma?" "I don't know. I can't feel her." Terror gnawed at Sarah's insides. "Emma!" She called out, trying to sound brave despite the fear clawing at her throat. That's when the darkness began to shift. It was subtle at first, an almost imperceptible flicker. But then a low hum echoed around them, like the chirping of crickets turned sinister. "Mom, what's happening?" Lucas whimpered. "I don't know," she admitted, her heart pounding like a war drum. Suddenly, the air vibrated, sending ripples through the darkness. A distorted whisper threaded its way into Sarah's ears. "You should not have come. Now, you'll join us forever." The voice was familiar, sending a chill down her spine. Was that Lily? No, it couldn't be. "Run!" Sarah shouted, pulling her children along. They stumbled through the darkness, the atmosphere thick with anguish. With every step, a sense of being watched intensified. "What's wrong?" Anna cried, her fear palpable. "Keep moving. We need to find Emma." But the shadows twisted and curled around them, tugging at their legs, latching on like thirsty vines. The whispers grew louder, a cacophony of tortured voices begging for release. "Join us, belong forever. Get off!" Sarah screamed, fighting against the suffocating weight of them. She tore herself away from the clingy shadows and pushed forward, her breath quickening as she felt her children's hands slip from hers. "No! Mommy!" Panic surged through her as she spun around, searching for them in the oppressive dark. "This way!" She shouted at the faintest glimmer of light pushing through the shadows ahead. Hope flared, igniting her spirit as she pushed through the entwined tendrils of darkness, her heart racing with the desperate need to save her kids. Just then, a piercing scream echoed through the void, and a figure slipped into the light, a shadow of a girl, hair billowing like dark smoke, face contorted in despair. "Emma! Help me! Emma!" Sarah lunged just as the darkness seized her, wrapping around her limbs like cold chains. The light flickered and dimmed. Faces appeared in the shadows, each filled with desperation, pain. "You belong to us!" they cried, their words echoing with haunting familiarity. Just as everything began to fade to black again, Sarah locked eyes with Emma. "Stay with me, we can make it." But doubt crept in. The shadows whispered too enticingly, promising relief from their eternal struggle. Within the darkness, something shifted. A single word, clearer than the rest, snaked through the air: eternity. The world swirled and twisted as the shadows roared, closing in. What price would they have to pay for their escape? Would they resist the call of the eternal, or would the darkness claim them all? The screams echoed in Sarah's ears, blending with the whispers of the shadows that licked at her skin. The weight of despair crushed down hard, but the flickering light remained. Struggling, she pushed against the pull of the darkness, unwilling to let go of her children. "Emma, reach for me!" she shouted, extending her arm as far as she could. The shadows writhed around her as if alive, twisting in agony at her defiance. With every heartbeat, the ghastly voices grew louder, drowning out reason. "Mommy!" Emma cried again, but it felt further away, like a distant memory fading into nothingness. "Hold on!" Sarah urged, pushing forward. She could feel Anna and Lucas somewhere behind her, the little ones clinging to each other, their breaths quickening with fear. But she needed to focus. Her eyes darted from the flicker of light back to Emma's shadowy outline. It was slipping away. Just then, the shadows began to coalesce into figures, tormented faces forming from the void. They were once familiar, twisted now into grotesque versions of their former selves. Faces that haunted her dreams came alive, reaching out with outstretched fingers, desperate for connection. Sarah recognized them all, neighbors who had vanished, friends they had lost to the unknown. Join us, they cried, their voices harmonizing into a chilling serenade, beckoning Sarah and her children. No. You're not my family. She screamed, the sound ripping from her throat. The figures recoiled, their cries morphing into a cacophony of rage, and the pressing darkness seemed to pulse in sync with their fury. Mommy, it hurts. Anna whimpered, her tiny voice quaking. The shadows tightened their grip, dragging at Sarah's ankles, slowing her down. She felt their icy tendrils clawing at her determination. She had to keep fighting. With all her strength, she yanked her feet free, forcing herself closer to the struggling form of her daughter. Emma. And just like that, the flickering light surged, illuminating a patch of the abyss. It illuminated a distorted path, creating space amongst the raging shadows. Within the light, she saw Emma's silhouette, trembling but stable. Take my hand. Sarah yelled. Emma, frozen in fear, hesitated. The shadows whispered promises of comfort and love, concealing the hideous truth beneath their allure. But then Sarah saw it, the flicker of defiance in Emma's eyes, a spark of trust that broke through the haze. In one swift motion, Emma broke free from the shadow's grip and leaped forward, her small hand reaching toward her mother. They touched, and warmth ignited between them, pushing back the invading chill. I'm here. Emma cried triumphantly, but Sarah's joy was short-lived. The shadowy figures staggered back, warping and twisting in an attempt to reclaim their lost prey. Run! Sarah shouted, her voice cutting through the chaos. But as she turned, a piercing wail sliced through the air. Lucas and Anna were nowhere to be seen. Mom! Lucas's echoing voice cut through the silence, now distorted and far away. Help! They're taking us. No! Sarah screamed, a familiar panic surging. Please! No! Not them! The darkness lunged, tendrils swirling, eager to ensnare what remained of her family. Sarah's heart raced as she spun in all directions. The light was fading fast, losing itself in the encroaching blackness. She was losing them. Stay together. I'm coming. But the shadows were too quick, closing in like a hungry predator. They grasped at Sarah, their whispers weaving threats and promises of eternal togetherness. Somehow, above the insistent darkness, something else brushed against her mind, something tenuous, like the soft touch of hope. Eternity, she murmured, fearing what it might mean. Just then, a realization struck her. They wouldn't just take her children. They wanted her too. As panic swelled into desperation, Sarah felt the weight of 100 choices crashing down on her. Should she risk everything to save them? Or would the darkness offer them an escape that she could never grasp? In that moment of twilight, as shadows loomed closer, an idea flickered into existence, dwindling yet fierce. There must be a way to turn the darkness against itself. She steadied her breath, preparing for the fight of their lives. But as the chilling screams echoed around her, a single question loomed large: what would she sacrifice to reclaim her family from the depths of despair? Sarah's heart thundered against her ribs as she forced herself through the oppressive darkness. The flickering light seemed like an old friend, pulling her forward. Emma clung to her, their hands still linked as they surged ahead. But with each step, the shadows writhed and shifted, hungry for the warmth they carried. The cries of Lucas and Anna echoed ever louder. The anguish of her children built a tangled web of desperation in her chest. Where are you? She yelled, her voice cracking under the weight of fear. Just then, a chilling lullaby floated through the air, its haunting melody oozing from the dark. Join us, each note tasted like ice, sending shivers down Sarah's spine. They're using your voices. She shouted, panic rising. Stay away from my kids. With all the strength she could muster, she pulsated energy into her legs, pushing through. Mommy, I can't see them. Emma cried, her eyes wide and shining in the fading light. I know. I'm not giving up. Sarah gritted her teeth, determination coursing through her veins. In the swirling murk, she felt for the tether of her children, pulling it close, unwilling to let go. "Stay with me, Emma." Then she realized, the whispers were forming around her. Faces twisted from the shadows emerged, each more grotesque than the last. Their sunken eyes and hollowed cheeks bore down on Sarah like a suffocating fog. "Join us," they beckoned again, fingers outstretched. The creatures shifted closer, feeding off her fear. "Get back!" she yelled, instinctively pulling Emma behind her. The shadows slapped against her skin, biting cold and relentless. It felt as if they were searching for a crack in her spirit, a weakness to exploit. Yet, her fury ignited like a flame. "You think you can take my family? You're wrong." With renewed vigor, Sarah spun around, eyes scanning the grotesque faces for the warmth of her children. "Lucas! Anna!" she screamed, the echo bouncing around her like a rubber ball. "Mom!" Lucas's voice wasn't far, it was tangible, laced with fear. His cries molded the shadows around them, intensifying the chaos. A glimmer of movement caught Sarah's eye, a shift in the darkness that felt almost alive. Then, as Sarah focused, her heart sank. Lucas and Anna were there. She could see them entangled with the wraiths of the lost. She could almost reach out and pull them close. "No! No! No!" she cried, lunging forward. But the shadows shifted, swallowing her children further into their nightmarish embrace. Their silhouettes twisted, a mess of tangled limbs and desperate faces. It was like watching a horror unfold in slow motion. "Hang on. Just hold on to each other." The shadows shrieked back, mocking her. They surged forth like a tidal wave, ready to extinguish the last flicker of hope she fought to maintain. Just then, bright light erupted from the depths of her heart. It surged, pure and blinding, dispersing the closest shadows. "I won't lose you!" Sarah screamed, a primal instinct flaring within, sending heat into every inch of her body. She realized she had a choice. She could either be consumed by this darkness or fight harder, risk everything. Sarah felt the warmth behind her fade as Lucas and Anna cried out desperately. "Stay away from them." The words left her lips like a curse, strong and full of the terror she felt. But the shadows merely swirled around, retreating for now, only to regroup once again. They seemed to be calculating, assessing. And that familiar lullaby returned, enticing and sinister. "The darkness craves. You're just a reflection," she shouted back. "You can't have them." As her declaration hung in the air, a new sound broke through the din. A low, mournful wail, building in intensity, rose from deep within the shadows, promising that the torment was far from over. "What is it waiting for?" she thought, dread creeping along her spine as the shadows lurked closer, pulsating like a heartbeat, ready to strike. Then a sinister whisper cut through the nightmare. "Sacrifice, what are you willing to give?" The question loomed heavy in the air. A sickening chill rushed over Sarah. And her grip faltered, shadows creeping closer to her exposed parts. She realized then the darkness was leaving her with a final choice, one that could change the very essence of her family's history. What was she willing to sacrifice to reclaim them? The shadows loomed larger, the whispers thickening into a suffocating mist. Each breath became a battle as Sarah felt the weight of their cold presence pressing down on her. Fear crawled around her heart, squeezing tighter. "What do you want?" She shot into the abyss, desperation lending strength to her voice. Everything came the echoing reply, smooth as oil but fraught with malice, spiraling around her like smoke. She felt Emma tremble beside her, a tremor she wished she could absorb. "Mommy, I'm scared," Emma whispered, her wide eyes glistening with unshed tears. Sarah turned to her, forcing a brave smile that wavered at the edges. "I know, honey. We're going to get through this," she said, her voice steady despite the churning turmoil within. But in her heart, dread began to take root. The creatures swirled closer, their forms flickering in and out of shape, as though their very existence was tethered to the fabric of nightmares. Faces stared at her, ghostly visages of anguish weaving tales of loss and despair. "Join us," they sang, the chorus melding into a pitiful harmony that scraped at her sanity. The sound burrowed into her head, whispering tales of giving in, of surrender. "I refuse!" Sarah screamed, gathering her strength, transforming fear into fury. "You will not take my children." Each word seemed to ignite a spark, briefly illuminating the darkness surrounding her. It gave her a sense of purpose, but it was fleeting. Shadows danced with glee, their sinister laughter echoing through the void. She felt their fingers dancing over her skin, cold and biting, as if testing her resolve. Then a new sound pierced through a high-pitched giggle, sharp and jagged. "Mommy, help us!" It was Lucas. The sheer terror in his voice fueled her rage. "I'm coming!" She screamed, breaking into a run, dragging Emma along. The flickering of her internal light cast grotesque shadows against the twisted forms around them, illuminating briefly the grasping claws and hollow eyes. "Hold on!" she called back to Emma, who struggled to keep pace. "Don't let go of me!" They raced forward, but it felt like they were moving through syrup. The shadows closed in around them, longer and darker with every pulse of her heart. She could almost see her children, tendrils of darkness prowling around their little bodies. "Lucas! Mom! It hurts!" he shouted, dread pooling in her stomach. The sound of whimpers twisted into a gut-wrenching symphony, cranking the volume on her panic. A flicker of familiarity ignited a desperate instinct. "What is the cost?" she thought, grasping at the relentless string of darkness. "What must I give?" "Sacrifice your warmth. Your light." The voices beckoned, swirling around her. Treacherous and temptingly sweet, the lies dripped like honey. "Never!" Sarah roared, a steel resolve hardening within her. "I'll fight you with everything I have." As if responding to her challenge, the shadows lunged. Electricity coursed through her bones, an instinctual reaction to strike back. It was a power she never knew she had, the drive of a mother. "Emma, stay close!" she cried, throwing her arm wide to shield them both as the darkness surged. But the wails shifted into laughter, wicked and unyielding. "What will you sacrifice?" they chorused, drawing closer. "A piece of your heart? A drop of your soul?" In that moment, Sarah realized the depth of the outrage she needed. The shadows were right, they demanded a price. But how much was she willing to pay to save Lucas and Anna? Before she could ponder the chilling query, a flicker of movement drew her eyes away. A shimmering light, brighter than anything she'd seen in this abyss, caught her attention. What was it? Hope? Or a trap disguised? "Follow me, Mommy. We can't stay here," Emma begged, her small hand pulling at Sarah's sleeve. Heart pounding, Sarah glanced at the beckoning light. "This way," she commanded, taking a deep breath as they stumbled toward it. The shadows groaned, their wrath palpable, as if they sensed their prize eluding them. But the eerie laughter echoed around them, relentless. "Sacrifice it," droned deeper than before, vibrating through Sarah's bones. With the light drawing nearer, she caught sight of her children once more, their faces contorted in pain and fear. Was that glow the path to them? Or was it another cruel trick? "What will you give up?" the shadows whispered, growing impatient, hungry for her answer. Desperation gnawed at her resolve, her family's cries ringing in her ears. The very essence of her spirit trembled, teetering on the brink. What was she truly willing to sacrifice? And would it save them, or lead her straight into the darkness? The shadows closed in, impatiently awaiting her answer. The stifling darkness pulsed like a living entity, wrapping around Sarah as she clung to her children, Emma's small hand gripping her tightly. The weight of despair loomed, pressing down harder than ever before. But Sarah could feel something shift within her, a flicker of determination igniting even amid the chaos. "Listen to me," she urged, meeting each child's gaze. "We're not lost. We're together, and that's our strength. We can fight this." The shadows quivered at her words, silencing for just a heartbeat, as if weighing her resolve. "You think unity can save you?" A voice snarled, echoing eerily from the depths. "Join us, and you will understand true power." "No," Sarah shouted, grounding herself. "You think I'll trade my children for a promise? I would rather face the darkness than join it." With renewed anger, she pushed forward, gripping Emma's hand tighter, pulling Lucas and Anna along. Flickers of light pulsed in the distance, shimmering like a beacon. "Look!" shouted Lucas, pointing toward the glow. "It's getting brighter." "Stay close," Sarah urged, doing everything she could to shield them from the wraiths that danced around their feet. She could feel the chilling breeze of past souls teasing her back, whispering doubts, showing shadows of loss. But stepping into that light was just within reach. "Mommy!" Anna cried, her voice rough with fear. "They're coming." The shadows surged again, closer, disembodied faces warped in pain, their voices ringing as one. "Join us. You want to save them. You know the truth." "Shut up," Sarah shouted back, her voice echoing with a strength she wasn't entirely sure she possessed. The warmth of her children's hands was almost buoyant, each heartbeat a reminder of what she was fighting for. "You can't take what you don't own." As if sensing their power, the darkness writhed and hissed, coiling around them, tightening like a vice. "Then sacrifice." They echoed, the command reverberating, teasing her resolve like a lover's deceit. What would you abandon to save them? That question slapped Sarah hard, igniting an urgency she couldn't ignore. Desperation clawed at her, but beneath it was rising courage, the kind a mother discovers in their darkest hour. "No!" she screamed, her heart pounding. "I won't give in. If you want a piece of me, you'll have to take the whole me." The shadows recoiled, shrieking in protest as light surged again, brighter this time. She felt a divine warmth racing through her veins as the luminous glow enveloped her family, beckoning them deeper into its embrace. "Run!" she commanded, taking the lead, and the children followed instinctively, abandoning the grasping shadows. Hand in hand, they sprinted toward the light, the darkness swirling behind them like a feral beast. The air grew sweeter as they neared the brilliance. Every step pulsed with energy, every heartbeat a note to a chorus of hope. They were so close now, almost there. But the cries of the past surged once more, echoing a haunting melody. "Leave her, take the children." "Never!" Sarah shouted, adrenaline pumping through her as she felt the shadows clawing at her heels. "I choose to protect them, even if it damn well kills me." With each step, the walls around them seemed to pulse with life, thrumming as if responding to her strength, a force stronger than all the grief the shadows had wrought. Together, they embraced the light, drawing closer and closer until it enveloped them wholly. "Hurry!" she urged, adrenaline pushing them forward, and just as she felt the darkness clawing at her back, they breached the bright barrier. With a roar, the shadows closed in, but the light expanded, shattering around them as they emerged into a new space, the attic, bathed in the soft glow of dawn. Breathless and wild-eyed, Sarah surveyed her surroundings. Light poured through the window, illuminating every corner of the attic, banishing the darkness. "We're free!" she gasped, clinging to her children who clung to her in return, faces bright with victory. But then they turned back to see the portrait still hanging on the wall, its surface rippling like strong water. Inside something stirred. "Mom, what if it comes back?" Emma whispered, eyes wide with worry. "It won't," Sarah insisted, though her heart raced, uncertainty lurking just beneath the surface of her confidence. "We broke its hold. We know who we are, we know our strength. Together, we defeated it." Sorrow spilled over her as she remembered the stories and shadows of the past of the family she had feared, the darkness that once lived. "Let us bury it," Anna suggested, her brave little voice breaking through. "We can break the curse." "Yes," Lucas chimed in, determination weaving into his tone. "Together." Sarah nodded, an optimistic strength swelling in her chest. Together was the only way forward. As her children rallied around her, an iron resolve settled within Sarah. The attic no longer felt like a prison but a sacred space of reclamation. They would take the tales of their ancestors, both tragic and transformative, and seal them away, bury them forever. "Let us do it," she said firmly. "Let us end this." Where fear once thrived, hope now blossomed. They would find themselves, and together, they would shape their story, ensuring that the shadows of the past wouldn't cast any more fear. With hands intertwined, mother and children forged a new legacy, one filled with love, not darkness. They turned from the curse and faced their future, the light fluttering around them like a healing balm, whispering promises of brighter tomorrows. And as they moved forward, Sarah knew that true family was forged not from blood or darkness, but from the battles they faced hand in hand and the light they chose to carry together. This, she knew, was their story, a legacy rewriting itself in hope and courage. Now, if you enjoyed this chilling conclusion, it's your time to take the plunge. You need to subscribe now to the channel so you don't miss the next exclusive stories that will keep you up at night. Smash that like button now to feed the algorithm, because you know it makes a difference. And be sure to flood the comments section with your reactions and theories about this ending. Let us hear how the story resonated with you. Don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. Only true fans understand the importance of supporting the channel through these actions. Let us create this community of storytellers together.